webinar. Just a minute that I start the presentation, and so we can see this webinar about the new onboard firmware version 3 that has been released last week for the ZoomPro Total Station. So just a minute that I start the presentation. Okay, so this webinar is about the main new functionality that are included into the new firmware version 3 for the Zoom 20, 30 and 35 Pro Total Station. Topics of this webinar are: what are the compatible instruments to load this firmware? How can you upgrade a Zoom Total Station with this new firmware? Also, a customer can upgrade by its own the Total Station with this firmware, and then we will see the main new features that are included into this firmware. So we will concentrate on the most important new features. Okay. What we need for this webinar: for sure a ZoomPro Total Station. We will see also after that with the ZoomPro 30 and 35 you have also the option to have the map view and the raw 3D, but we will see this. A USB stick to upgrade the Total Station, and a fully charged battery. Before to start a Total Station firmware upgrade, it's always necessary to be sure that the battery is charged. Okay, let's start. What are the compatible instruments that for this firmware upgrade? All the Zoom Total Station can be upgraded with this firmware. So Zoom firmware version 3 is compatible with all the Zoom Total Station. With Zoom Pro 30 and 35, we have all the features included in the firmware can be loaded into the Total Station. Zoom Pro 20, these two features are not available into the Total Station. So the map view and the raw 3D application is not available into the Zoom Pro 20. All the Zoom Total Station, so if you are talking about Zoom 20 and Zoom 30, map view and raw 3D is not available, and officially the firmware 3 has been only fully tested with the Pro Total Station. But if your customer has a Zoom 20 and 30, they can use the firmware 3 to upgrade the station. So the only Total Station that fully support all the features of this new firmware are the 30 and 35. With all the other Total Station, the map view feature and the raw 3D application are not available. And for sure, this is probably one of the most important. The upgrade is free of charge for the customer. So if you have a Total Station, just upgrade the Total Station. Okay, now we will see how to upgrade the firmware. So first of all, we must download the firmware from the partner area. So I just show you here very quickly. So we go in download. Okay, just log in into the partner area. So we log in here, then go into Total Station. Here is the same, so we can select Zoom 35, Zoom 30, the firmware is always the same. So we select from here the folder, okay, then we go into firmware, here, firmware folder. This is the file, so version 3. So here we open, guys, total station, the total station model that we have, but the firmware is the same for 20, 30, and 35. We enter in firmware folder and we just download the file. Okay, this file is a compressed file, and this file includes the firmware, which is called the geomax.fw, and different language file. Then you must copy the firmware and the language file into the system folder on the USB stick. If the USB stick don't have a folder called system, you must create this folder. After, here I also have the simulator, so before you copy the firmware and the language file into the system folder on the USB stick, then if the folder don't exist, you just create a folder called system and copy these two files into the USB stick. Then here from the total station, also check that the battery must be full. You go in tools, okay, load firmware, and then you just select firmware. Unfortunately, I cannot show the next steps because this is only the simulator of the total station. So unfortunately, I cannot show you the next steps, but you just select firmware here and then click to continue to upload the firmware. So the procedure is very, very easy. So download the firmware, copy the firmware and your language into the system folder in the USB. Then you go in tools, load firmware, just select the file that you have copied, cont, and the firmware is upgraded. So the procedure is very easy. Now that we have seen how to upgrade the firmware of the total station, now we go to see what are the main and most important new features of this new firmware. One of the most important is probably the map view. So what is the map view? Map view is the function that allows you to see the point on a map. So where you can access this map function from the survey. Okay, now I just start, so I go in app, survey. Okay, now I just create a new job, so I click on F1 and create a new job, new, okay. Now we call this one webinar, for example. Okay, so we create a new job. Now we select the station, for example 100, F3 to just enter the coordinate of this station. So for example, coordinate is 0, 0, and 0. So this is just an example. Okay. Instrument elevation, 1.5 meter, it's okay. And now we have set the station. Now we set the orientation, so we press F3 to select the orientation. Here, as you know, we have two options, manual angle or by coordinate. In this case, I want to make an orientation by the azimuth. So I just click F1. Okay, here, okay, backside ID, it's okay, the name that we have. I just click All to set this angle. Press All just to make an orientation. Okay, now we are ready to store some points. So I click on F4 to start to survey some points. Okay, so for example, here we just measure some points. So I measure point 1, I press All, so I measure point 1. Okay, then I just change here. This is the simulator, so I just change a bit the angle. For example, I change a bit the angle, so I measure another point. Then I change again the angle, I don't know, to 30 gone, and I change the distance here. Date and fish all. Okay, let's store the last point. So the last point, I don't know, this is the angle and this is the distance. for example. All. Okay, now I have stored some points. If we want to see this point on a map, we must go on page 4. So I can click here, or with this button we can change from one page to the another. So as you see, here we have, this is the current angle of the station. So this means that if I move my station to a new angle, this angle is changed. So this is the current orientation of the station, and here we have the points that we have stored. Here we have the buttons to change the view in the map. So this button is used to zoom in, this button here is used to zoom out. Here we can just click here and move the view, otherwise we can pan the view with here, this button here. This is the button to adjust the zoom, to show all the points, and this is the zoom window. So it's like, I don't know, AutoCAD, for example. So this is the page where you can see directly here the point. If you store, let me check if I have a code. Now I go to store a point with a code. For example, I call this one wall, this code. Okay, I change, so I store another point, but in this case I also add a code to the point. For example, the angle is 60. Okay, so I measure this point with the code wall. Okay, I go back to page 4, and now you see that you can see the point name here, and also you can see the code into the map view. So you have the point here, is the point you have stored. The red dotted line is the current angle of the station, and here you have the point ID and the code. Okay, so it's very easy. It's just an additional page in the survey where you can see also the map of the point. So this is really very useful when you are in the field. Okay, so this is one of the main functions that we have. It is the map view. Okay, this is the example that we have done. So click on App Survey, create a new job, enter a station and make an orientation, then switch to page 4 to see the map. Okay, so this is the main, one of the main functions. Then if you have the question, I will answer at the end of the webinar. Okay, now I want to show you very quickly another application. We will do a dedicated webinar about Road 3D, because Road 3D is not complex, but it is needed sometimes only to speak about this application. So now I just want to show you that we have this application, but I will don't go into the details. So this application, Road 3D, you can access it from, okay, just a second that I go back. Okay, you can access this function from here, so apps, page, second page, here, Road 3D. In the previous firmware version, we had only the Road 2D. Here we have also Road 3D. So this is the function. Okay, go. What we have in this function? This function is used to upload and create horizontal and vertical road alignment. So in this function, you can handle horizontal and vertical alignment. So you have two possibilities. You can upload an horizontal or vertical alignment from GGO. So GGO has a new version that we have released together with this firmware that allow you to open road data from other software, so from other road software, and convert this raw data into GSI format and upload the GSI format here. So when here I don't have, but here transfer, import. Here I don't have, but if you have a raw data, you can go here into import and import here the raw data. And then you go to stake out this alignment that you have done. Sorry, wrong page here. Otherwise, you can click on New here to create a new alignment. Let's call this one test. Okay, and here you can define the different alignments of straight, curve, spiral, and so on. So I don't want to go into the details with this application because probably we will do a dedicated webinar. But this is just to show you that we have this new application that allow you to create or import horizontal and vertical alignment. And then based on this alignment, it is possible to set out points and slopes. So just to show you that we have this one, but then we will do a dedicated webinar. And also this function is only available in Zoom 30 and 35 Pro, not in the old Zoom Total Station and not with the Zoom 20 Pro. Okay, now another very new function, very useful, are the additional formats that you can use to import and export data. So now with this new firmware, you can import and export in ASCII format, an additional mask for the GSI, you can import and export in DXF format for AutoCAD, and you can import and export code list, format, and configuration set. Let's start with probably the most used, the ASCII format. So with this new firmware, you can import and export directly ASCII file. So for example, now I show you how to import an ASCII file. So in this example, I have created a very simple text file, so like this one. So the file, it's very small here, so you don't see probably the number that I have here, but are this one. So I have point ID, east, north, and the elevation. Next point, east, north, and elevation, and so a very simple file. So what you have to do is to copy this file into the USB stick, so your text file into the USB stick, into the job folder. Then from the total station, here you go in transfer, import. So what I want to do now is to import this point in a new job. So I select, okay, single file. Here you see, this is the folder into the USB stick. So removable memory jobs, I select import.txt, okay. Now this asks me, okay, you want to import this file, in how you want to call the new job. For example, I call this one import2, for example. Okay, click OK. Now here I have to define how the file is done. If I am not sure, I can click View to have a preview of the file. So okay, this is my file. So I have the point ID, comma, east, comma, north, comma, the elevation. So this is comma, the first data field is point, then I have the east, then north, and then the Z. This is the example. So if it is okay, I click OK. Okay. Transfer or import successfully completed. Transfer more data, no. So what I have done, I have imported this file as a TXT. So now I can go in data, observation, known point, and this is the job that I have created, import2, and these are the points that I have imported. So the ASCII point that I had has been imported into the total station. The same also for the export. So if I have a job, I can go here in export, USB stick, where I want to export, data type, observation and known point. Here I can select the job, so I can select the job, test for example. Okay, I select where I want to export the file. Here the format that I want to export. In this case I want to export as ASCII file, so I click OK. And here again I have to define the delimiter, the unit, so I can export in US feet, meter, the format that I want, if I also want an header or not. And here again the data field, so I can export the point ID, east, north, Z, and for example also the code. Maybe I want before the north, so here I can switch to north and here to east. Here I have an example, and I just click OK, and the data are exported on the USB directly in ASCII file. So I think this is very useful function to import, very easily to import and to export data. So here in the presentation that I will upload on our partner area, I have just written the steps for the export. A new format that is possible to export is also the GSI. So now it is possible to export in GSI with a new mask free. Let me open again the simulator. So I go export here. Again, this is I just select the job, again test. Okay. I switch to GSI. Okay, and you see here I have 3 different masks. With this new firmware, we have created this new GSI mask called mask free. This is a very complete mask for the GSI export, which include all this information. So include the station, all the information about the station, the information about the orientation, control point, if we have set the azimuth in the orientation, and all this information about the measurement. So in case you want to export in GSI and to have available all the function, all the information, this is the format to use. Then with this new firmware, it's also possible to export and import in DXF format. So you can directly import a DXF file, and the same if you have a job, you can directly export your job in DXF format. Then you can also export a lot of other information. For example, let me switch here, go back. Here, you can export also and import ROD data. This is only for the ROD application. But then, for example, you can export your code list, and also you can import your code list. This code list has to be created in GGO tools. And then you can import from GGO tools your code list, and also you can export. Format, so in case you have a format file that you have created in Format Manager, you can import, but this is like in the previous version, you can import a format file to define your own format, and also you can export the format file into the USB. Configuration. Here, this option allows you to export the settings that you have into the total station. So if you have to configure, for example, 5 total stations, you can export from one total station the configuration and import the same configuration into the other total station. So this export is just a text file with all the settings that you have into the total station. For example, the unit, for example, the angular unit, meter or US feet, the illumination of the screen, and so on. So all the settings can be exported with this configuration. And backup. Backup allows you to export everything that you have into the total station. So this makes the full backup. The same is also for import. So when you go, now we have seen the export, also import. So when we go in import, we can import a backup, or a single file. As a single file, we can import the XF, code list, format file, and so on. So, as we have seen, you can export and export code list. Also, with this new firmware is also available the quick coding. Then you can export and import format file, configuration file, and backup. Then I will not go into the details, but you can see these into the manual. We have additional functions. For example, we have the plane offset application. That is application that can be used to calculate the offset between a plane defined by 3 points and a measured point. Then you have this one, for example, the title is wrong. This is not plane offset. This is the intersection of 2 lines. So this application is used to calculate, so I show you very quickly. This application here, I go in apps. It is in Kogo. Here, I have to do again the orientation. Just very quickly, I do it. Okay, I can select. I just show you very quickly. What is this one? Let me open the same job as before. Okay, this one, line. So this application allows you to define 2 lines, so 1 line from point 6 to point 7. So I can take this point from the database or measure this point. Define a second line from the point 8 to point 9, and with calculation to calculate what is the coordinate of the intersection between these 2 lines. So I define 2 lines by measuring or selecting 4 points, click on calculate to calculate the coordinate of the intersection. Then we have other functions like the reference line, the set of a grid on the reference line, and then other new application based on not a line as reference, but an arc. But you can see all these new features on the manual, so I don't want to spend so much time about this. But another very important is this function, editing data. This function can be used to edit a point that you have stored. So I show you an example. What does this mean? So for example, I go into survey, okay, and I store a new point. For example, the point 6. So just I go here, all. Okay, so in this job I have stored the point 6. Now I want to change the elevation of the target. So how can I do? I have to go back, or I click on function. Can I also go, no, sorry, I have to go back here. I go into data, okay, observation. So the job that I'm working is this one, so I click on view. Here I have all the observation. So the last observation that I have done is to store the point 6. Is the point that I have already stored before. So we can go on modify here and change the target elevation. So now the target is 1 meter. Okay. So this is, for example, you see now, let me check the coordinate here. So I can just, for example, is 0.4. And here I go and I modify the elevation of the target. And so the elevation changes. So just to show you again what I have done. So I show you again because this is very useful function. So I go again into survey and I measure a point. For example, 0.7. So I just change it a bit, so horizontal angle, just change some value here. Okay. Now you see I measure the 0.7 with the target elevation 0. Okay. Or can say 1. Okay. So this is the target elevation and this is the point ID. I have stored the 0.7. Now I see, oh, okay, but the target elevation is wrong. It's not 1 meter, but 2 meters. So how can I change this value? I have to go back here. Then I switch to data, okay, observation. This is the job where I was working, so I click on view to see all the observation. I switch to the, here, to the, so this is not 0.6, but this is 0.7, and I want to change this value. Okay, this was not 1 meter, but 2 meters. So as you see now, this is my elevation that I have now. So I go on modify, I change the target elevation from 1 meter to 2 meters. I click OK. Now the elevation of this point is 2 meters, and obviously also the Z coordinate is changed. So what you can do, you can modify after a measure, you can modify the target elevation, or you can also modify the point number. Okay, this is not the 0.7, this is the 0.10. No, sorry, just brightness number. This is the 0.10. Okay. So this is a new function, very useful. So what you can do, you can change the code, you can change the reflector height, or you can change the point ID of a measured point. Okay, I think that we have seen all the main functions of the new firmware. We have really a lot of other functions, but we don't have enough time to see all, so if you want to have a better look on all the other functions, please go to check here on the product announcement that we have done, and inside here you can find all the new applications. So here there are also other functions that I don't have talked about during the webinar. So if you want to have a full overview of what we have new, you have to check the release note. What we have seen here are the main features of the new firmware, and yes, if you need more information, just check the release note. But I think these are the most important functions. So probably in the next webinar we will talk about the Road 3D module for the ZoomPro, because it needs a dedicated webinar, and also I would like to show a webinar only about the locators. Okay, if there is any question, just say, don't hesitate to write it in the chat.